Hi, I'm Matt Retro, and today I'm going to go over my studio setup, give a tour, show things how I do it. The studio is built around creativity and performance. It's always changing, and that's to keep things fresh, and because I'm just exploring, figuring out how to do different things. If you're a beginner, you don't need all this. Even if you're seasoned, you don't need all this. You can do everything with just a computer and software. I do it because I love it and have a lot of fun. So let's get on with the tour. Starting with the computer, I use a laptop. I have it on top of my right monitor. I haven't had any problems with that. It's a Dell PC, Alienware M18R2. The reason I got this one was because of the performance specs. If I had to do it again, I would probably get a desktop version that you probably get more powerful or lower cost. The reason I originally got a laptop was because I thought maybe I'd go work on music outside of the studio, you know, mixing or whatever, or doing other little things. But for the last couple of years, I haven't been doing that, just to kind of get away and then clear my mind. So I think next time I'll get a desktop. I typically have this folded down, which why you never see that screen, and then I put hardware on top of it. Since I've changed some things around, I got too many other wires and things connected to it. So I think I'm going to change the placement of it to go off to the side of the desk, just to get it kind of out of the way. The DAW that I use is Ableton Live. It's very popular with electronic music. I originally didn't get it for electronic music. I got it to create jams, more live performance, crafting ideas, and that's why I chose that DAW. As I started using it more, that's when I got into electronic music, and haven't really looked back since then. It's also very good to integrate with hardware synths and drum machines and such. So as you can tell, that's exactly what I do. Some more on Ableton and why I use it. There is a lot of material on YouTube for this, so I'm not going to do it justice, but it'll at least explain kind of what I do, and then you can take it farther. But each one of these blocks is a sequence or a clip, they call it, and I primarily use MIDI clips. I either record live to a MIDI clip, or I draw things in and sequence it out kind of manually. This example there I'm showing you is a MIDI clip playing to the ARP 2600M, and then I use Ableton's controller. It's called the Push. This is the Push 2 version. They have a new one out, but this one's fine for me. And here you can launch the whole scene right here. So when I click on this, I'm launching all of those 3 elements to play the sequence. Then I can either go to another one, or I can stop one. Here we can stop to ARP, because I know that that's a stop there. So that's what I do typically. Or you can go to the next sequence. So you can manually launch scenes or sequences from the controller. So it's, you know, you're not touching the computer and the mouse. You can do it with push buttons here. So I find that very useful, and obviously I use it all the time. I have what's considered a hybrid system. So I have a lot of external hardware gear that goes into the audio interface. The audio interface then directly connects to the DAW. The DAW, I do a lot of mixing each channel, whether that's adding EQ or reverb, or I can send that analog signal back out into another device, like other effects in terms of reverbs or delays. And in this particular case, in the back here, this rack mount, this is Rupert Neve Master Bus Transformer, where then I process that signal and then send it back into the DAW. But for the most part, the mixing itself is being done inside the DAW Ableton. Moving on to the audio interface, I use an RME Fireface UFX3, which has 12 channels. And then I pair that with Ferrofish Pulse 16 MXs, and those are connected through a MADI network, and that expands. Each one of these racks has 16 channels in and out, so additional 32 channels. So currently this is a total of 44 channel inputs. So most of the things that I run in the studio are connected to these. I use a spreadsheet to keep track of all the inputs and outputs, where they're located, and then the associated Ableton channel number, because they're not all aligned, so you gotta sort that out. Show a little more detail. This is messy. Definitely isn't fun stuff, but I'm always in here switching things, moving things around. So my studio is always changing and living, and I've given up on trying to make it tidy yet, because I'm always adding to something new or expanding. But that's why I have to keep track of channel numbers very, very well. And sometimes I'm like, hey, what the heck? What happened there? And I find, oh, okay, I was too busy one time and didn't document what I did. But that's what I got going on here. That's where all the inputs are. And I do like that I can access this very easily. You know, it's not buried behind something, or, you know, so it's real quick to get under here. So I know someone's gonna comment, and it's a good comment. I would ask the same thing, like, why not use patch bays and then swap things in and out in the front? I have used patch bays. I think they're great. Well, just to show you that I'm not anti-patch bay, over here on this rack, what I do is I take most of the synths over here and I have them going to this patch bay, and then I connect another cable, basically a snake. It's just, I'm extending the cables by using a snake all the way to the audio interface. The reason for that is, instead of having 5,000 cables for each, you know, for all these synths go through there, and it becomes even more messy, I have one snake that's condensed. In fact, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is right there. That's that's 8 wires in one there, so it makes it a little bit cleaner. Now, it's still a mess, but it's a little less of a mess. So with the MIDI system, from my experience, what I've determined is I do not want to use USB MIDI. I think, or I've had problems with USB, and at least with PCs, where they're always reassigning ports and doing all kinds of crazy things. And I was always trying to get it to reconnect or re-recognize. I said enough with that. I run completely DIN MIDI, which is the 5-pin connector. I find that to be very robust, and then also the transmission links, I believe you can go a little bit farther in the way you can split and things. To me, it makes a lot more sense, especially when you're dealing with a multitude of newer synths and older synths, which are based on the DIN MIDI system. So I have what I would call a central decentralized MIDI system. I have a central unit that collects and distributes all the MIDI, and then I have decentralized satellite hubs that either split or merge data. I've tried to color code this in terms that could be easily understood. The black are inputs that are going to the synth. The blue is MIDI data is passing through the synth or out, where you're playing on the keys and you're sending MIDI data back to the system where you can record that MIDI data. So that's how I've split up the MIDI system. For someone looking to get started with a smaller system, a more simple system, I drafted up this schematic that's less components, just one splitter, one merger, and this would help someone get started, and actually you can have a lot of fun with this. Now I want to reiterate, this is a representation. The system that I have is always changing because I'm unplugging, replugging, this, that. You know, I get a new synth, then I say, oh, okay, I've got to go over here. I tried to make this simple, but also have some complexity just as a representation so that someone else could create their own system. Just like the audio inputs and outputs, I have a spreadsheet that keeps track of all the MIDI data, the channels and the ports, in order to make sense of it. Over at this station, you can see that I have two MIDI solution devices. Here's a Quadra Thru. And then the merge, that's taking the synth output data and then sending it back to that central unit. I have MIDI Thru data going to Eventide time factor, which is a delay pedal. So MIDI data in terms of time and sync is important. On this side, got these rack mounts, another set. I have Quadra Merge, Quadra Thru. So again, the Quadra Thru is basically splitting the data from the mioXL or the central unit to, let's say, 4 different synths. The merge is taking data from whatever inputs I have up to 4 and then merging into 1. A common question or problems that people have is latency. So when I'm doing jam videos, I try to keep latency down as minimal as possible. I run 48 kilohertz sample rate, 24 bits. The buffer size is 128 samples. I have input latency around 3 milliseconds and output 3.8. So total is 6.75. I find that to be not too noticeable. And there's other latency that's generated by using other plugins that could add latency within that chain. So I'll show that next. On the master bus chain, I try to keep this as minimal as possible. I have an external audio effect, which is the MBT. That's our Rupert Neve master bus transformer, and that has a latency of 324 samples or 6.8 milliseconds, so that's additional. And then the limiter is just the stock limiter. If I select that, it will show you that the latency is pretty small, 64 samples. As an example that can cause latency, I put a plug-in, which is very common, the FabFilter Pro L2. Just the default setting generates 3100 samples of latency, which is around 65 milliseconds. And so you'll start to notice that when you're playing. That is not something I would suggest to have for live performance or jamming. There are settings you can change with limiters and plugins. So for instance, I had changed the style for the FabFilter Pro L2 to punchy, and it drastically reduced the latency to 731 samples, around 15 milliseconds. So there's things you can do, just be aware of it. One of the most common questions I get, or snarky comments, is what the heck is this Focusrite 2i2? You have all this equipment and you're going through that. They make some kind of smart ass comment. That's fine. I explain it very kindly. So basically what I do is I take the headphone out of the main interface. That's what you see here. So this is a headphone amp. It then goes to Focusrite, left, right. It's just 2 channels. Then I have the Focusrite plugged directly into my phone, exactly what you're hearing now. It's seen as an audio interface into my phone. I have a Samsung Galaxy S25. I had an S21 before this, and then I had something before that. it's worked, so that's been very nice. I plan on changing this to some sort of wireless setup, so I'm not tethered to cords and all this stuff. That's my plan, but I'm very slow to things. It's got to be robust. Well, that's it for the studio tour. Hope some might find this informative for what they may want to do or may not want to do. I think that's just as important. Appreciate the requests that everybody had, and we'll catch you on the flip side.